Hello and welcome to IT Tech Talk. I'm your host, Joel Ward. Sorry about that. With me is Asher. Asher, how are you doing today?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Sorry. We've had a couple of slip ups trying to get this going, but I'm glad we're on the show finally. Asher, I got to email you back and forth a little bit, so I know a little bit more about you than my listeners do. So if you could give a little background about yourself, I would love to hear it. And so my listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, thanks for having me on, Joel. But yeah, my name's Asher Carr. I'm originally from northern New Jersey, but I'm currently located in Washington D.C., Maryland area right now. And yeah, I graduated from college. Went to Penn State, going to Indian Alliance, 2016. My major was in business, but the concentration was entrepreneurship. And then after that, I went into finance. I was pretty much a financial analyst at a few different spots for the first few years of my professional career. So I worked with Bloomberg, UBS, Mitsubishi Trust, and I was in private wealth management on the operation side of things in general throughout all that. And while I was at my last position, I actually got into real estate investing on the side. My stepdad got me into it, and just started to try to get some creative finance and stuff going. So some listeners may not know that. We'll get into that in a little bit. But I decided, hey, I want to get into real estate at some point. So I actually got let go from my last job, and then they were just making cuts. And I got my license up in New Jersey, and then I ended up getting recruited down here in DC for with the sales team down here. And right before the pandemic, I was with that team for 2 years, bringing a new business and doing operations for them, and I currently do operations for another team right now. But yeah, but and outside of that, I do have a consulting business as well, which specializes in real estate, self-publishing, and just general business operations, so startups and stuff like that. So yeah,
So,
and I
oh,
don't sleep.
sorry. So basically, you were trying to get into doing flipping houses, kind of.
So I was more of a buy and hold guy. So it was just
Okay.
more of like, if someone didn't really want their home and they weren't necessarily in a rush to get all the money up front, I would do like creative financing, they would pretty much be the bank own, and they would hold that mortgage, if you will. And then I would just pay them for X amount of years until they get it, and stuff like that. So just really a lot of creative financing and within the investing realm of real estate.
Okay. So could you, for my listeners who don't know, what is creative financing? What exactly does that do? Like, give a little more detail what creative financing means.
Yeah, so for a real estate the real estate investing realm, because there's retail, which is what we all know. For creative financing is pretty much like a strategy to help close on a deal and to really acquire a property and not having to go the traditional way of having a mortgage and everything like that, right? So with creative finance, so I go to you, Joel, say, hey, you're looking to sell your house for 100,000. Like, all right, cool, but you don't necessarily want to go through the traditional paperwork with banks and stuff. Then I would say, okay, well, what if we have a note written up saying that I owe you the 100,000? I'll give you, say 10,000 up front, and then the rest of it is, 90. Then you have the note of 90,000, and then I will pay you back that 90,000 within a certain time frame that we agree upon. So say like 5 years, right? And so I just pay you. So you're essentially in a way like kind of like a rent or landlord tenant type of thing where you're out of the house, but like I'm currently living in it. But I'm paying you the 90,000 you're owed, and then I have 5 years to pay all that back. And usually this is something that people go to if they can't necessarily, like, there's a thing called lease to own. So where you can't, the buyer at the time, they can't afford, they're not qualified to get the mortgage, but they have the means to like pay the rent or even have some cash up front. So they go into to an agreement, say, hey, okay, look, I'll be a renter for X amount of time, and then by that point I will be able to qualify for a mortgage, and then we'll be able to purchase outright with the mortgage and everything like that. So those are the type of things I was getting into, and yeah, I learned a lot and decided I wanted to get into real estate, and that's why I'm on the retail side right now.
So you're on the retail side of things, not what you were doing currently. You're on the retail side of the business deal of it.
Yeah, so I am licensed in New Jersey and
Okay.
Maryland now. So, but right now, what I've been doing the last 3 years with the two teams I've been with, I'm more of an operations guy. So it's making sure that all of the for the agents, everything is taken care of, all the
Okay.
systems and models are taken care of, and things are streamlined. Occasionally, I'll go out there in the field for certain things, but outside of that, I'm just more back end, making sure the team doesn't fall apart essentially. So
So
yeah.
you have your own team in real estate. So what are you have how many real estate agents that work for you currently?
So I'm in a very special unique position. The last team I was with, that was about 10
Okay.
I was working with, and just making sure I was bringing new business for them. This one, I'm currently like it's a much smaller team
Yeah,
right
yeah.
now, about 4 or 5, excluding myself. But I'm pretty much just back end, making sure that they're supported so they can be able to close the deal.
Are
And
you all licensed in the same states like New Jersey and Maryland?
no, that's just me.
Okay.
The teams I've worked with they're just been in the DMV, so DC, Maryland, and Virginia,
Okay.
the region.
Gotcha. Now, you've been doing this for how long now?
So it'll be 3 years in December.
Okay. So you've been doing the real estate on the retail side thing for 3 years, not the
Yeah,
okay,
not the
okay.
yeah. I strayed away from the investing, and it's just because I honestly didn't know what I was doing to a point. I was able to get a rental in the Poconos. So I
Okay.
did, well, like it was a family friend. He didn't want to like deal with the house anymore, but we did create a financing. I got tenants to rent it out. And so I was able to cover his mortgage and then I'll make profit for myself. That lasted about 3 months just because, again, I was completely new. They just
Yeah.
stopped paying rent. So I had to do the whole eviction process and stuff like that. So now I have systems in place for rentals where I will do background checks and then
Hmm.
they'll get the money squared away and stuff. So, but yeah, a lot I've learned from that. And yeah, getting the license really helped, honestly, to get a better understanding on how to work in the industry. And just kind of working with clients looking to buy or sell a home, it brings a whole new perspective of how at the end of the day you're working with people, right? And life happens because real estate happens because of life. So the people buying or selling for a lot of different reasons, and then yeah, in some cases you do got to get creative, and that's where the investing.
Yeah. So my question is so is getting in and out of the real estate game is
Also,
getting out of like real estate out of like the investment side into the retail side, is that much better than doing investment? So is retail better? What I'm trying to ask is retail real estate better than investment real estate?
it really just depends on your goals. And yet it really, they actually do go hand in hand because you have people like when you own a home, you are like that's the first step to wealth generation, right? You own a home, you're building equity, you have all these responsibilities and stuff, right? And that actually does open up opportunities to do other things. So there's a lot of different avenues within real estate. Like on the investing side, you have the buy and hold, the creative financing, the fix and flips, the wholesaling. There's a lot of different things for that. And yet with the traditional retail side, with just buying a home, that's one step. Like you could buy your very first home as an investment property, which I would recommend anyone looking to do that. Just buy it as a first. Don't get all the bells and whistles you want. Just get the bare necessities, live in it for a few years, and then rent it out as you're getting your second home, right? And then you start building a portfolio. So really, on both sides, you're an investor one way or another. It's just a matter of what your mindset is with the actual asset.
So on top of that, it's kind of funny you said that because basically, I mean, I bought my townhouse and I'm living in it, but I basically have created an investment property. I've been putting a lot of work into it. I put brand new deck on it, I've done all new wiring, stuff like that, and I
Yep.
do all of it myself because I worked in contracting with a couple of friends
Nice.
and electrical, plumbing, and all that stuff under a bunch of people. So I did a lot of work. And I remember when I bought the house, it was 121. It was 121,000. And now the houses in the neighborhood are going for like 150, 160.
Mm-hmm.
And I have already in this house alone with this new office room, with this new room,
Mm-hmm.
with all the new wiring, with the deck, I put in well over $30,000 worth of work. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm like thinking when I go to sell this, I'm getting that investment back. As long as the market's good, I'm getting that investment back. And that's, I tell people, it's like you could rent the rest of your life, or you could buy an investment into your own property, put money into it, get money out of it. And that's how I look at it. I mean, I'm sure that's how you look at it. Is like you put money into it, you get money out of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's definitely, especially during this time, I mean, with, people are looking at the media for all these things with the market crash and recession and stuff like that. And that's like it's kind of a challenge as an agent. Again, I'm not out there as much. I have brought in a significant amount of business in my last 3 years with the teams I've been with. And yet the educational portion that most people don't know that we see, like the trends and everything, that is very crucial nowadays because like people, they just look at what they see in the news and like, okay, well, the housing market is gonna crash, I'm just gonna wait, blah blah blah. But then at the end of the day, people were trying to wait during early on the pandemic where we saw historic like interest rates 2-3%, and then those same people are still waiting when interest rates are now like below like 5 right now, right? And so it's really just a matter of just getting educated. And really when it comes to buying or selling, the only best time to do either one is if you actually have to do it. I mean, I know that a lot of like some people get the perception that real estate salesmen, or saleswomen, they just try to get you to buy or sell just so they can get their commission and stuff like that. But like it has to make sense to the person. Like, what is your true motivation to wanting to buy or sell? And is it actually going to be worth the time and effort to go through that process? So that's one of the things I've learned, especially with bringing a new business, is really figuring out the motivation and making sure that everyone's educated enough to make that move, because it's the biggest investment you'll ever make.
Yeah. And I remember when I signed the paperwork, I'm just thinking to myself, I'm like, I really just signed my life away for the next 30 years. But in the next 30 years, I could have made triple what I paid for the house. And that's what you got to look at. You can't look at like, I'm signing my life away into all this debt. As long as you're making payments, as long as you're upgrading the house and continually doing the investment side things and making that money back, you could walk out of it. Like my parents, I remember talking to my dad, because the house across the street from them sold for about 500,000. And when they bought their house, they bought it for 110 or something. And now they put well over, I think he said $100,000 in the house. Okay. And if the house across the street is selling for it and their house is just as big and has a lot more land, it can go for more. My dad was like telling me, because when I bought my property, he was basically saying, is like, look, you're buying an investment. And I said, I'm going to put a lot of work into it. I'm going to get that money back. And I tell my buddy who's also a real estate agent, and he was like, I tell him, like, hit me up in 5 years when I go to sell. And I was like, but I told him, I said, look, if the market is not good in 5 years, if I'm not going to get my investment back, I'm not selling. The only way I would ever sell this house is if I'm making that money back. Like, I'm not going to sell something if I'm not going to make that money back. I don't know if you agree with that or not. If you should, like, I wouldn't want to sell and take a loss. I want to sell and take a price increase.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and sometimes and that's the thing too, like there's nothing wrong with putting all these upgrades and everything like that. It's just some case, I forgot what the term is. I'm sorry. But there is a way where you can really screw that up for yourself if you're putting in these upgrades and then you actually sell it at a loss because it's something that the market doesn't really want, or that community doesn't really warrant for. I forgot. I was with a buyer. We were doing a walkthrough earlier this year, and he was telling me some NFL players, young NFL player in the area, got a home, like big, not mansion, but like kind of like a mini mansion. He purchased this property, did all these upgrades, like with the kitchen and all these other like built-ins and stuff like that. And then he ended up selling it at a loss because those features weren't, and amenities weren't something that the community actually wanted. That wasn't thing, so yeah, so to a point, like, yes, you more likely to get your money back when you do sell after all those upgrades, but you also want to make sure what kind of upgrades you're putting, what upgrades you're putting in, and if it actually is something that the next person will be, because it gets to a point where it's going to be very specific. The home is going to be very specific, and that makes it tougher to find the right person to actually purchase the home if you were to sell. So.
Yeah, I know. I totally get that. Although, my neighbor just sold not that long ago. I think it was like a year ago. they did some upgrades to the house, not terribly a lot of upgrades, but they did enough. And then you got my neighbor on the other side of me, and she hasn't done any upgrades. Okay, and she's trying to sell her house, and it's like, okay, it's great, but like you need to do like no one's buying. But the problem is, it's like you said, specific upgrades. You got to do like someone next person's gonna be like, I don't like that because every buyer is like gonna be looking out for one thing, like, oh, I like this, but I don't like that, or I like this, and that's how I was because I was a buyer at one point, and I was like, oh, this house is great, but oh, this doesn't have a washing room hookup where I want it, or oh, like
Right.
the kitchen is right here, but I wish it was like a little bit farther from here. And like every little detail matters to the buyer. And it's like you come down to it, you gotta definitely make sure you do things that make it appeasing to the buyers versus like if you do something like for yourself, it like you said, you got to think about the buyers in the end. Because if you were a buyer and you were looking at the house, like, yeah, I'd buy that. But would someone else buy that? So I totally get what you're saying with that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you definitely want to be careful with some of those, and especially in that's what contractors and all these fix and flippers think about too. Is like what would actually sell. You can't just put anything. You can't just put the newest tech within the home just because it's trending. Like it has to make sense. And yeah, just there's a lot that goes into it, but at the end of the day, big returns is always going to be a goal.
Yeah, you gotta make that money. So what are your goals then? What are your plans the next few years? Are you thinking of sticking with real estate or going into like more investment side things, or what's your end game?
Yeah, yeah. So definitely looking to get back into the investing realm. Yet right now it's just really expansion. So really the skill set that I've built up in the last 3 years from being on the back end of things, I want to bring a team to multiple markets and just be able to do that. That's kind of like my mindset right now. Just conquering as many markets as possible, and then within that time definitely get into the investing side, because when real estate teams get to a certain point in the business where they're generating enough income, they got good agents doing their thing, and they're serving a lot of people, they tend to create like tertiary services too. So you can start off as a real estate, just a basic real estate team, and then you're going to start offering title services like in-house or home insurance, or things like that. And I'm just looking to just do that for a team. Outside of this, I do, like I said before, I do consulting right now. So CarCorp Enterprise, it's going to be an official launch the next in Q4 this year. But I've taken the year to put this consulting program together so I can serve people within the real estate world, so referrals or just getting people connected with the right agents in any market. And then as an author, I now offer self-publishing services. So I just self-published a book for somebody this in the spring, and he hit bestseller in a local bookstore, which was a goal we wanted to hit for him. So do that, and then again, general just business consulting, and all that actually does kind of come back to the real estate thing too, because real estate, you're always doing whatever real estate needs, buying or selling, referrals, whatever. That's always going to be there. Agents, though, they have stories to tell, and books are being written about their experience, like what I did for mine. And then just operations, they're always figuring out how to scale the business and being on top. So that's pretty much where I'm. It sounds like I'm all over the place, but that's pretty much where I'm at right now, with expansion and just really coming from contribution any way I can.
Yeah, so let's talk about your book. What made you want to write a book about it? Like just get your experiences out there, kind of.
Yeah, so the book, it's pretty much a pandemic story. It talks about my journey into real estate. It's called From Broke to Bold, and it just chronicles when I was let go from my last job in finance, just unexpectedly. I took that opportunity to get my license when I was back in New Jersey, and just dive into real estate from an operation standpoint, and just my journey on how I ended up in DC. The whole thing, the whole anchor for it was to marry my fiance at the time, because around the time I got let go, we had a future date like that. A year away from that date was we were supposed to have our wedding. And so it's it's a very raw, very emotional book. I didn't hold back with just showing how just human I was, because everything my life up to that point, people thought I had my life together. Like they always said, like, "Do you going to be successful?" Blah 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 and stuff like that. And I was just very quiet. I'm very humble about what I do, and so this is the story that just kind of shows the goal setting, reaching your goals, being able to be the best in what you do, and just going after what you want. So yeah.
No, that's cool because I actually wrote two books. Actually, written four books, but two of the books actually were about success. One of the books was first book was called "A Successful Future Isn't Just Written," and the second one was called "Finding Success Through Yourself."
Mm.
And in those books, I talk about my success story, kind of like what you did, like the raw, untold, like humbleness about how I got started and how I built my careers and everything around me. And like I self-published them through Amazon, and like, yeah, they sold a couple copies here and there. It's great, and they're getting published as audiobooks, and that's great. But like, it's like the fact that like I put myself out there, like I would never, like years ago, like, oh, I always wanted to write books, but I was like, I never thought I would. And then I finally wrote it, and I'm like, oh no, everybody can read my story now. It's like, do I really want? It's like
Right.
nervous part, and I don't know. This is the reason why I want to ask is like I get freaked out. It's like, do I really want people to hear my story? And that freaks me out a little bit. But yeah, it literally freaks me out because I'm like I get a little nervous. Like when people are reading my story, I'm like, oh, like do I really want them to hear my testimony, my story? And then like, what are they gonna think about?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I was kind of the same way. I'm very. If you look at my social media, I barely post. And I have a thing with just not sharing my personal life. So doing that was a whole thing for me. Like you got to get comfortable, get uncomfortable, and then and as a writer, it was just I don't know. It just blew me away with the responses it got, because again, everyone had that like perception of me, like I was doing well and stuff like that, and no one knew I was going through all these things. Like at one point, I talked about it in the book, I was on unemployment. I didn't have enough money to take the train, so I had to like skip the turnstile. It was rough for me when I first got down here in DC, and yet I had to take advantage of the opportunity I had in real estate and be able to do what I can. At the end of the day, I just wanted to marry my wife. And so if you have a goal for just in general, like you got to be stubborn about your goals and flexible about your methods. And I found a way to make whatever I needed to happen, whether it's just to survive, whether it's to marry my fiance, now wife, spoiler alert, and just everything from there. That whole experience, I knew like if I really wanted to achieve something that I could do it. And I'm very, as crazy and tough as it was, those trials and tribulations really create the person that you're meant to be, and to fulfill your purpose. And so, but yeah, that's why I wrote the book, and I know that people definitely got whatever they needed out of it. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, it looks like we're coming up on 8 minutes on my timer. It still hasn't alerted me on Zoom, so I'm guessing that's not working because it normally alerts me when I have 8 minutes left. So we're gonna cut it off now because I don't want to like get cut off halfway through the sentence and then have to go back on and re-record. So Asher, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure having you. I look forward to sharing your book and any other links you want to share with my listeners. Uh, is there anything else you'd like to add? Real quick before we go, there's one question I'd like to ask you before I ask all my listeners or all my guests, all my guests is
Gotcha.
what is one thing you wish you would have known back then that you know now? Like, which is something you wish you could have told yourself like now back then? Yeah, see, I got you.
Yeah, you got me. I think the one thing would be to be careful of the person you become in the pursuit of what you want. That thing that has been, which is actually kind of the underlying message of the book as well. um but yeah, just whatever you decide to go through, whatever goal you're trying to accomplish, is just be careful of who you're becoming in that process. And because sometimes we get lost into becoming someone else we didn't mean to be, and it just ruins things. So depending on what you want, just check your heart as you go along, and just make sure that you're actually going after what you want for with good intentions, and not just because of whoever else is telling you. Live your own life, and just be able to live your purpose every single day.
That is literally raw and awesome. I like that. That was like that was the best answer I think I've ever gotten. Like, I think that was so raw and real. Like, I've never gotten someone to give that real of an answer. Like that's pretty awesome. So thank you so much, Asher. I appreciate you. I'm looking forward to seeing what goes on in your life. Like, keep in touch. Thanks so much for going on the show. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and yeah, just keep crushing.
All right. Hey, thanks. Hey, thanks for all who listen. Thanks for all who tune in. Thanks for everyone who subscribes. For all those who do subscribe, thank you so much. Please continue to stay alert for more content that's coming to the paid subscription page. And thank you very much. And you all have a good night.